The Gambia is a very small country.
The Gambia is the smallest country on mainland Africa.
It's a population of 1.8 million people. It's the size of Jamaica in terms of, population density and just the geographic size of it.
It was colonized by the British. Gambia gained independence in 1965. For the most part, it was very stable.
Siga John is an activist and public health expert. She is the CEO of Signara Global Solutions, a consulting group that works with social justice NGOs in the areas of public health and human rights. Her brother, YaYah Jammeh, was killed in the December 30th, 2014 coup attempt.
So the Gambia, it was a beautiful place of peace, of music, of good food, of tradition and culture, weddings, beautiful colors. We used to nickname Gambia the Smiling Coast. And Gambia, no problem. The other countries used to make fun of us that no matter if you tell the Gambian, can I have the moon by tomorrow 12? They'll be like, oh, no problem. When you come back, if they can get it, they say, oh, I tried, but I just couldn't get the moon. So they always make fun of us. The Gambians, everything is no problem.
Anybody who knows Gambia before will tell you that, yes, it was small. It's still small, of course, but it was poor. It is still poor. But we had one thing. We had freedom. We had democracy.
I was born in a free country, in a free world. I cherish freedom. And we used to go to bed without even shutting our doors. Nobody cared because at the time, nobody was coming there to do any harm to us. But all that tradition changed in 1994.
1994, I was in my early 20s.
Pasamba Joe was a reporter in the Gambia. Today, he is a spokesperson for Duga, an organization for Gambian activists in the diaspora.
I got a call that there was some disturbance. And I decided to try to go to Banjul to see what was going on, Banjul being the capital. It became very apparent that things were not normal because there were military all over the place and they would not allow people to cross over to go to Banjul.
A very interesting occasion. You can see the armed forces men, the armed forces council from left to right.
Around 6 p.m., the military made an announcement on one of the radio stations.
Lieutenant YaYah Jammeh.
That the government that had been overthrown and it would be replaced by the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council.
And of course, Jammeh came in with a lot of promises. He was going to curb corruption, tribalism. He was going to resuscitate the economy. I mean, things that every Gambian would like to hear.
In fact, the first headline that came after the coup was an interview that the Daily Observer did with Chairman Jammeh then. It was, we will never introduce dictatorship in the Gambia.
The first thing they did when they came to power was to use the media to sell their message, promote themselves, assuring the public that they came with a different message, that they were there to drive away corruption, nepotism, flamboyant lifestyle. And the media covered all that, gave them extensive coverage.
Musa Sadi Khan was the editor-in-chief of The Independent, a major newspaper in the Gambia. Today, he resides in the United States with his family.
And that is one of the key roles of the media, to serve as a watchdog and to make sure that the government is held accountable. And that was the time the media bashing started.
Somebody said that this country is a hell for journalists. Well, then there are freedoms and there are responsibilities. The journalists are less than 1% of the population. And if anybody expects me to allow less than 1% of the population to destroy 99% of the population, you are in the wrong place.
Now, as soon as they started introducing decree number 1, we restricted political involvement. We knew there was a problem. Then came Decree Number 4, political gatherings, political writings. They were all banned in that country. That was August of 1994.
First time I went back was in 99, and it was unrecognizable, the place was. It was not the Gambia that I knew. As well as there were all these armed soldiers at traffic stops everywhere. It looked like a military state. I was like, what is this? Like, actually, Gambia for the longest didn't even have an army. We didn't even have an army, for God knows how long. I think until I was about 12 or 13, I remember it's when we created this small army. But, to have this small country now where there are traffic stops almost everywhere with armed men holding guns was just, I was like, what happened?
Jeffrey Smith is a human rights advocate focusing on Africa with a special expertise in the Gambia. He has worked with such groups as the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Center, Freedom House, the National Endowment for Democracy, and UNESCO.
Best way to describe Gambia is it's a climate of fear. Dissent is criminalized. There is really no space for disagreement with the president and his policies. It's an environment marked by widespread, wide-scale repression. Civil liberties are non-existent. Freedom of expression, freedom of association, peaceful assembly does not exist in the Gambia. If you read the country's history, the security forces have opened fire with live ammunition on protesters a number of times, including against children.
Everything came to head, though, in 2000, April 10th, 11, when innocent students were protesting. And Jammeh, who was in Cuba, gave the orders that, sorry for my words again, because according to people who were with him, what he told them was, teach these bastards a lesson. And when they were done teaching lessons, 14 students were gunned down.
Asan Suware remembers the protest.
I was about 16 years old, just like any regular day. I believe it was a Monday, April 10th in 2000. So on my way to school, about halfway, I can see there was a student blockade on the road. And most of these students were about high school and middle school students, ranging from 14 to 18. So when our bus arrived at that destination, we were asked to come out of the bus and join the students to demonstrate. So as we proceed, the security forces created a barricade and started assaulting the students as young as 13, including females. The students started retreating. I got panicked and tried to flee for safety. As I turned around trying to do that, I got shot in the back. I felt like a sharp object penetrated my body. And then all of a sudden, I started losing the ability to breathe. As I lay on the ground, dying pretty much, I see more students falling on the ground, being shot. I could see a Gambia Red Cross ambulance crossing and going to a hospital. I could see the back where a pile of students, bodies on top of each other. Like there's no room for any more. And there was a couple of men, I don't know who they were. Before I lost consciousness, I could hear and I could see in a blurry way where a police held his rifle, questioning who you are, who are you, as the men beg for safety. We are just helping these children. We are just helping the students, taking them to the hospital, raise their arms up, please don't shoot, don't shoot. We're just saving these, kids.
Economist Sidi Sane served as former Gambian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Gambian ambassador to Senegal under President YaYah Jammeh. He has been the executive director of the African Development Bank Group and senior advisor on the resource mobilization with the UN Development Program for Africa. He is currently an activist blogger in the United States.
We just took it for granted that, you can get up, you can go to work, and you can come home to your family. Even that routine has become a traumatizing experience for Gambians now because you can go to work and never come back. So on the human rights side, there are disappearances. There are people who were forced on exile. There were murders. There were extrajudicial executions. There are tortures. Newspapermen, journalists have disappeared.
All the media houses that initially dissented from against him were either abducted. If you're a reporter, you were either abducted, terrorized, brutalized, and if you're lucky, you end up still escaping with your life. Like Musa said, it can end with a lot of lifelong trauma, physical pain, emotional pain, and mental trauma that you have to live with for the rest of your life. If you're unlucky, you disappear forever, like Chief Ibrahim Amane. Or you get assassinated, whilst driving your car, like Dede Hydra. If you're lucky, like Dr. Babagale Jallow, who had the independent newspaper, they firebombed your newspaper a couple of times, and the last time you barely escaped with your life, and they arrest your mom and dad and parade them on TV.
Well, I was arrested on the 27th of March, 2006, and this came after the government had reportedly foiled a coup at an advanced stage. My paper ran a story on the coup, and we discovered that a lot of people were arrested and in secret. And our fear was that these people were going to be executed. So I went home and they sent some intelligence officers in my neighborhood. And they came and knocked at my door exactly 12 midnight. I was on bed already. So they woke me up. My wife asked me to jump over the fence. I told her, no, I have not committed a crime. And even if I committed a crime, I would still hand myself over because I'm a citizen and I believe in the rule of law. They told me that I was wanted at a police station. I told them why. They said no, they don't know. And later they told me that they wanted to transfer me to Banjul at the National Intelligence Headquarters. We spent the night with 45 other inmates in the same one big cell. And after a few days, 5 days later, they came for us.
Musa Sadi Khan was arrested and held without charges for 22 days.
They decided to torture me. That was why I had this mark here. And I had mark all over my body. The main reason of cutting here was they said I was becoming too stubborn. My mouth is a problem. And they also broke my right hand into 4 pieces. So I had to be in pain for 3 weeks. And when I was released from jail, the other troubling thing was that I still wanted to stay in the country and practice as a journalist. But how can I stay in the country when I was in pain and no doctor was bold enough to conduct examination on me, let alone issued me a medical certificate or treat me? And one of the doctors was so frank to me, he told me point blank that even as I am talking to you right now, I'm being monitored. And I'm scared. It gave me some painkillers and asked me to leave the country. He said, you are a young man, you have a whole future ahead of you, leave the country, but no doctor is going to treat you. I said, no, this is my country of birth. I'm not going. Yeah, I love this country and I cherish it. But everything changed. I don't have any choice.
Musa and his pregnant wife fled to Senegal.
We thought when we went to Dakar, maybe we were going to breathe some sigh of relief. But that was never the case. Because they kept sending intelligence officers to come there and monitor our activity. And they use diplomatic vehicles to kidnap people from Senegal to Gambia. And diplomatic vehicles are never searched. So which means if they kidnap you in Senegal, they can get you to the Gambia easily, which is scary. And it became complicated when the kids joined us. It became a situation where even when the kids were going to school, we have to go and watch over them. The goal for the Gambian government is they don't want to give you peace of mind. For them, it's about what they call collective punishment, for you and the family to share the pain. I was not the only one sharing that pain. My wife was part of it. And my wife has nothing to do with my job. My kids were part of it. So they don't know that physically we don't control him, but let us control his brain. and which is traumatic.
In 2010, Musa filed a lawsuit at the Nigerian-based Court of Justice of the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, demanding compensation for illegal detention and torture. A panel of 4 judges ruled in his favor and ordered the Gambian government to pay $200,000 in damages. The ECOWAS membership is made up of 15 West African states and is the most powerful body of influence in West Africa. Their mission is to promote cooperation and development. To date, the Gambia has ignored the ECOWAS decision and has not compensated Musa. Juan Mendez is a lawyer and human rights activist known internationally for his work on behalf of political prisoners. A former prisoner of conscience himself in Argentina, he has taught human rights law around the world, including at Georgetown and the University of Oxford. He founded the Anti-Torture Initiative at the Center for Human Rights and Humanitarian Law at American University. In 2010, he was appointed UN Special Rapporteur on torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. He made an official visit to the Gambia in this capacity in 2014.
When you see torture directed more specifically against categories of victims that are considered enemies of the state, that means that the ability to organize, the ability to challenge the state, even from civil society organizations or from political parties, is very, very limited. So that also has an effect on what other rights and liberties other people can exercise. Torture in the Gambia today is used as a tool of statecraft because it is a weapon in the hand of the government to make sure that nobody, even dares defy the will of the government. I would also add that it is assisted by the fact that there is no state institution that operates to control or to, prevent torture from happening in the first place. The courts are completely at the whim of the government. For years now, the president has brought a foreigner to be the head of the Supreme Court. First, a Ghanaian woman who left the country, in a rush. Nobody knows why. And then a Pakistani judge who also now has left. I don't know who the president of the Supreme Court is now, but we interviewed the Pakistani judge, and he didn't give us any impression that he was willing to stand up or to promote lower courts standing up to the government. There's just no investigation of crimes of any sort, no investigation of illegal arbitrary arrest. There's not ever. Gambia falls in that category of an autocratic state that controls the lives of everybody. Torture is very institutionalized, although at the same time it's very much at the whim of the president. I mean, the president evidently decides who is going to be tortured and who is not.
So I think there's a personal element there where he really enjoys inflicting pain on others, and he's been completely unapologetic in his public statements, and the fact that torture is so routine and is systematic within the security forces, within the National Intelligence Agency, the fact that he has an entire team of people in the country called the Jungulars, which their sole purpose is to inflict pain and to torture people in the country that he exerts command responsibility over, I think is a testament to the brutality that this man has within him, and that he has not been hesitant to inflict on his own countrymen. People who've worked closely with him, ex-ministers, ex-press secretaries. The fact that I've heard stories from several people independently of each other that he has cameras and monitors set up in his room so he can watch political prisoners being tortured and gets routine updates and asks very detailed questions on what was done to them, how it was done, how much anguish that they were in. And you start hearing these stories repeatedly over the years.
The degree of fear in the country is unbelievable. And you get into a taxi, you want to start anything political, the taxi driver will, oh, no, please. Because he'd be wondering if you're a spy for the National Intelligence Agency trying to entrap him.
If you call the Gambia trying to talk to them about, they put the phone down. When this happened with my brother, people were scared. I'm talking about people who were the same mom and dad as my mom, or who were the same dad as us, people who were very close to us, are scared to even come to our house. Some people will even start walking on the other side of the street when they come towards your house, because they're scared.
Obviously, the government wants to say that nobody demonstrates because everybody's happy. But there's enough evidence of clamping down that it's not hard to show that there is a climate of fear. Incidentally, the so-called political opponents, there doesn't seem to be really all that rhyme or reason to who is considered an opponent, because several of the people who gave us the strongest testimony about torture were people that the day before they had been very close to the president. And they are, they lose the confidence of the president and they become automatically subjects of persecution. And people who are considered, bright and maybe technocratic, not particularly ideologically inclined one way or the other, then they're suddenly, accused of conspiring against the state, and they're tortured, and in some cases, they're held in prison for a long time. Because they're relatively well known, under some external pressure, they may be released a few months later or years later. And then they leave the country. So that's what I consider a climate of fear.
Amadou Jammeh returned to the Gambia after spending 20 years in the U.S., where he earned his PhD and taught political science at the University of Tennessee. Upon his return in 2004, he was asked to serve on the president's cabinet as Minister of Information and Communication. Jammeh hoped he could help rescind the oppressive laws against journalists. The president dismissed him from that position 8 months later.
And I thought I was needed more in the Gambia than in the US. And since it's my country and there's a poverty and all these problems, I thought I had a duty to go back and try to bring about change. And that was the primary reason why I went back.
Jammeh decided to stay in the Gambia, where he opened a successful computer and IT company. He became increasingly concerned about the conditions in his home country.
And that's when I decided to set up the Coalition for Change, the Gambia. And initially I was doing it in a clandestine way, because there was no way the government would allow us to register, and I knew even applying would have endangered my life. It was at the height of the so-called Arab Spring, and we got very excited and thought it's our turn to do something here too. And it was during that process that I got so excited on African Liberation Day. We decided to print 100 T-shirts calling for an end to dictatorship. I not only distributed all of the T-shirts personally, but I wore them for several days. And that's how I got arrested and eventually charged with treason and given a life sentence. I spent 8 months in solitary confinement. I was put in what is called Bambadinka, like Crocodile's Pond. It's the worst place in the Gambian detention system. Even many of the prisoners, hardcore prisoners, when they're threatened with being sent to Bambadinka, they behave. So it tells you what type of place that is. And that's where the president sends his enemies, both real and perceived. So it was such a horrible situation, not allowed to read books, had no contact with any other prisoners. And when it rained, basically it poured on me there. So the situation was very rough. And I ended up watching ants move around, counting them. They did everything sort of actually beating me up to demoralize me and essentially to break me down. So all they had to do was torture me mentally so that by the time I get out, I won't be of any use to anyone. I won't be the one fighting them.
Amnesty International launched an international prisoner of conscience campaign calling for his release. Jesse Jackson came to the Gambia to meet with President YaYah Jammeh for the pardon of Jammeh and a fellow prisoner, Tamsir Jasseh, both American citizens. On September 17, 2012, Amadou Jammeh's 50th birthday, he was released and expelled from the Gambia. Both men had served in the president's cabinet. Jasseh had been held in prison for 6.5 years, and Jammeh for 16 months. On August 23rd of 2012, 9 prisoners were executed in secret by firing squad at the order of President Jammeh. These included political prisoners, foreign nationalists, and several who had not exhausted their appeals process. He had publicly promised to kill all 47 death row inmates by mid-September, ending Gambia's 30-year moratorium on executions.
If the sentences are not carried out, I will drink alcohol and eat pork.
I said, please, don't do that.
Iman Babaleh is a respected imam from the Gambia. He received the African Rights Defenders Award in 2013.
I was not able to stand it. I called the press and I make my sermons on my pulpit, on my mosque, came with the necessary verses of the Holy Quran to back up my point, and I asked him not to execute them. My request was published on the papers and it became viral. So I started having threats, calls, unanimous calls, that I have to leave the country, I should not go against the president, I should not appeal. Who am I to appeal to him? I continued, that's what I believe in. I was put into jail, this is the way it came. For 6 months, nobody knows where I am. I was denied my attorney, lawyer, denied my family, medical didn't know anything. They come at night, 11 of them, in dark clothes. You cannot recognize them. Only their eyes that you are seeing. And they normally come 1 o'clock at night, beating, hitting, torturing, and doing all whatnot till 5 o'clock in the morning. For the first month, I knew I was not arrested to be released. But whilst they are torturing me, there was a time when some of them said, don't hit him on his face. So that was a very good comment for me. I knew then maybe these people are thinking of releasing me, and if I have any scar on my face, it will be an evidence. So that gave me big hope.
There have been many prisoners who were detained and never taken to any court, not charged, and even their family members not knowing that they're in the prison in the first place. So it's a very difficult situation indeed.
Since the beginning of Jammeh's regime in 1994, thousands of people have been disappeared and killed without trial for their perceived acts of defiance against Jammeh's rule. Over 100 friends and relatives of those that participated in the December 30th, 2014 coup attempt were disappeared for over 6 months. The youngest was 14-year-old Yusufa Lowe.
Honestly, Jammeh rules the Gambia as if it is a mafia state. Like if you have a town with a godfather, he uses the military as his enforcers, as his soldiers to enforce his criminal acts, including, drug trafficking, gun running, you name it.
Iranian citizen Azim Agajani was sentenced to 5 years in prison following his arrest in October 2010 after the discovery of a ship carrying containers of rocket launchers and grenades. Agajani is accused of trying to illegally import weapons to Nigeria with the intention of shipping them on to Gambia.
The Gambia has sort of flown under the radar for so long. It's a very small country of 1.8 million people. It's the smallest country on mainland Africa. There is no threats to U.S. national security there. It's not a terror hotbed. But Along with that, people are now starting to realize that Jammeh has been implicated with Hezbollah, for instance. He has been implicated in drug smuggling in the Gulf of Guinea and throughout West Africa. There's been one journalist, David Lewis, for example, from Reuters, who's documented for years Jammeh's ties to Hezbollah, to various leaders within other extremist groups. So those ties are there. It's just a matter of the United States and other international actors doing their due diligence and penalizing him for having those relationships. And again, it goes back to the fact of we really need to seriously rethink and reevaluate what we consider a stable state and what we consider allies.
You cannot deny your citizens the basic needs and requirements. Clean water, basic health. You go to the hospital now, you will not find a single tablet of aspirin. I mean, that is not acceptable. And yet still, this very same government will be celebrating, they will find anything to excuse to celebrate anything. And they will be using public funds to do it. You see? While people are out there starving. 600,000 Gambians are food insecure. Right now, as we speak, there are Gambians who, if they have breakfast, they cannot afford lunch and dinner. Okay? It is a country that we used to eat and have leftovers for the pigs that we rear. They rear the pigs to go and have food. That's no longer the case because there's nothing to throw away anymore. If you have any food at all, you will be lucky. It cannot go on.
So he came to power in 1994 through a coup with no money to his name. He did not come from a family that had money. Now he's buying $4 million mansions in the United States. Now he's, buying luxury cars. So where is he getting this money from? Obviously that raises a lot of eyebrows, concerns about the rampant corruption, lack of transparency in the country. He's also really emerged as one of the most, a recognized heavy-handed dictator in terms of the lengths through which his government has gone to maintain control.
Those who accuse me of human rights violations, well, I leave them to the Almighty Allah. So, how long you stay in power does not determine your fate. It's what you do that determines your fate, as far as I'm concerned. But let me tell you one thing. My fate is in the hands of the Almighty Allah. I will deliver to the Gambian people, and if I have to rule this country for 1 billion years, I will, if Allah says so.
And we've seen that with our advocacy, even though many of us live in the US here, we try to engage the US State Department and US organizations, as well as the European Union, the UN, but we've made a lot of success. We've attained a lot of success in dealing with the European Union. 2012, the European Union came up with a list of demands, 17, which covered the whole range of human rights that the Gambia would have to abide by. And these are things that are consistent with the Gambia's own constitution. Either abide by these things and respect, the rights of your citizens, or else we would withhold development funding.
Gambia may be one of Africa's smallest countries, but it more than punches above its weight on the international stage.
How are you?
As you say, not just because of its president's views on homosexuality or on relations with the West. But, Mr. President, there are lots of international organizations that are aid and donors and partners with your own country. You point your finger at them, but they would say, look, we're helping the Gambian people. Why would you attack us?
Where did they help us?
They would say that they are giving food aid. They would say that they're giving budgetary support, a whole range of things that the IMF, the World Bank, the EU would say they want to partner with you in.
They're not helping me. If the West refund to Africa what they have looted for the past 400 years, plus 25 interest, they're not giving us any aid. They're giving us back what
something that is infinitesimal compared to what they have taken from us. So they're not giving me any aid. They're not giving me any favors. Let them give me back what they've taken for 400 years and see whether I'll ask them for anything. So they're not giving me aid. In fact, that's even an insult. If you take a bull and then give me only the horns, and you tell me you're helping me, that's an insult. So I'm not anti-West, I'm anti their hypocrisy and their racism.
Now, I understand that Gambia recently has expelled the representative of the European Union. We met with her. She was very knowledgeable, and she was under instructions to condition international cooperation on some performance on human rights.
The European Union has withdrawn millions of euros of funding for Gambia due to its poor human rights record, leaving the mainly Muslim West African nation to rely increasingly on donors from the Middle East for development projects. Diplomatic sources said the shift in soft power is of concern to Western governments in a region where Islamist militancy in northern Nigeria and northern Mali is fueling instability. One diplomat said, West Africa has a large, impressionable youth population that have no access to jobs. Their loyalty might be bought through aid, sometimes by those sympathetic to the Islamification of the region.
In fact, it is because of the sanction policy that the economic problems of the country seem to have been aggravated a little bit more. You know, because they are holding now, I think about $36 million, which should have gone to maybe infrastructural projects, because they do a lot of stuff. EU is the single biggest donor to Gambia.
You've definitely seen with funds from Western countries drying up. Again, the country it's morally bankrupt, not the country. The government is morally bankrupt, it's financially bankrupt, and what you're seeing now is Jammeh really trying to burnish his Islamic credentials. So when you see him publicly saying, I'm going to slit the throats of gay men, or when you see him making these sorts of statements, he's really trying to endear himself to other extreme Islamic leaders throughout the world. So that's why you see him going to Qatar, going to other Gulf states to try and get funding from them. And I think it's part of a bigger, broader plan, for sure.
The president of the Gambia has declared his country an Islamic republic. YaYah Jammeh claims the move marks a break with the colonial past and was in line with Gambia's religious identity and values. Over 90% of Gambians are Muslim. Jammeh has said that no dress code would be imposed and people of other religions would be allowed to practice freely. Jammeh has earned a reputation for making surprise declarations since taking office 21 years ago. In 2013, he pulled Gambia out of the Commonwealth, claiming it was neo-colonial. Relations with the EU have suffered in recent times, with aid money suspended last year over its poor human rights record.
The Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, Chapter 1, states, the Gambia is a sovereign, secular republic.
You know, if Gambia had petrol, if Gambia had economic contribution in the world, by now they could have stopped him. That's the fact of the matter. And he's trying to isolate Gambia as much as possible. He withdrew from the Commonwealth. He withdrew from all international organizations. Now he threatened to withdraw from ECOWAS and AU, that's African Union. So then he will have Gambia in a tight corner to do what he wants to do. And the world is watching. So that's why I don't want to hear now anything called human rights or democracy or things like that, because it's just in their lips. It's not something that they believe in.
We have lost quite a lot, not in terms of even materially, but in terms of human relations, in terms of exchange of ideas. We used to have exchanges of students between various universities. We used to have bilateral cooperation facilitated better through CFTC, which is the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation, with places like Jamaica, the barristers, you know, the legal minds of the country will come to Gambia, they can practice law and all this thing. And, you know, all of that we've lost.
Well, the people feel very helpless, and many of them count on those in the diaspora to help liberate them. because the level of repression and the poverty is already rampant, and then you have a regime that does not hesitate to even pick up elderly parents. So it's to a point where they feel helpless and look forward to help. That's why even the international advocacy, those that are based in the Gambia, are afraid of doing it. It's a peaceful exercise, but they're afraid after going overseas, meeting the EU, you come back, you may disappear.
There may be elections from time to time, but there's nothing democratic about the exercise of power. At the same time, I have no way of knowing whether Jammeh, the president, is popular or unpopular. But for me, democracy means respecting not only the rights of the majority, but also the rights of minorities to express themselves and to compete for power. Under the circumstances, there's no serious competition for power in the Gambia. And the most important thing is that democracy is characterized by accountability, meaning that the mechanisms of horizontal accountability between institutions, the judiciary, the executive, the legislature, in Gambia, nothing like that happens.
We have taken every possible fundraising to get together opposition party members, trying to, uniting them back in 2006 so that they can oppose elections. They take their thugs to beat them down, to beat these people down, refuse that they can campaign, refuse them access to television or any kind of media.
What do you mean by unity government? Unity government?
Bringing the opposition for nation building.
I don't have an opposition.
You don't have an opposition.
But we have people who hate this country. And I will not work with them.
We've done everything that is possibly available to us democratically. We can, sort of expose what is really happening. We go to the State Department. We've been going to the State Department for the past 20 years. Since we have pictures and meetings of, some of the information they already knew. We've met with every Gambia desk officer that has been in the office for the past 15 years. We've demonstrated in New York at the UN. We've demonstrated in DC. We've demonstrated wherever you could think about it, even in the region in Senegal. So all these democratic and peaceful means have been tried, but every avenue you try, it only gets worse. It doesn't get better. Last year, during the US-Africa Summit, YaYah Jammeh came.
His Excellency YaYah Jammeh, President of the Republic of the Gambia, and Her Excellency...
It was mind-blowing, first of all, that he was invited. We felt it was legitimizing him. I think that we, as in us who have been advocating for a decade and a half, had this false sense of, a little bit of security that as long as we don't go to Gambia, we're fine. So a lot of people who needed to go to Gambia to visit their family members would not come out to demonstrate publicly. That innocence was lost during the US-Africa Summit, when in broad daylight, only a few miles from the US Capitol, and in front of DC Metro Police, YaYah Jammeh security officials jumped out of their car and started beating down peaceful demonstrators.
Closer to home now, only on 7, a woman is attacked and the group responsible likely won't be charged. The victim tells us that she was kicked in the head and then punched by members of the protection team for the president of Gambia. This all happened on the last day of the African Leaders Summit in the district. Robert Lyles is live in Northwest Washington on the story for us tonight. Robert, what's next for the investigation?
Well, Leon, answers to what's next in the investigation, particularly what happened on that sidewalk behind me, are hard to come by tonight, and that's because we're receiving somewhat of a law enforcement shuffle. But the victim at the center of this alleged assault says what's much more painful than her concussion is that her attackers are in the wind, allegedly given immunity.
I thought that in America, nothing like this could happen.
Fatu Kammerer says she escaped a Gambian prison. to become an outspoken radio host here in the States. But Kammerer says when she tried posing questions to Gambia's president, YaYah Jammeh, outside the Hay Adams Hotel, she claims his security detail rained down punches and kicks.
They were kicking my head.
Gambian exiles say Jammeh's Principal Protection Team, or the PPO, were ruthless.
He hit me. He had a brace knuckle on his hand. I saw it.
Exiles say Jammeh is a dictator who's ruled the nation for 2 decades with an iron fist, and that Kammerer is exposing his deeds here in the States.
The president's motorcade just came up, and just in a split second, they all ran out. They were after the journalist. Her name is Fatou Kamara.
ABC 7 cameras were rolling, capturing this attack by protesters Tuesday. Yesterday, a delegation from the Congo was accused of a similar attack outside the Capella Hotel. Kammerer was raced to Sibley Hospital following her attack.
24 hours later, I got information that the president left the country. I'm like, no. There's no way I can believe this. I need to speak to the detectives.
D.C. police tell ABC 7 they can't answer if Jammeh and his detail were given diplomatic immunity and left the country, and referred us to the Secret Service. The Secret Service is referring us back to Metro Police and the State Department.
They let him go scot-free because of diplomatic immunity. I mean, he's going to come back and do it again.
Now, Kammerer says that she gave the names of her attackers to D.C. police, and we got a copy of the police report, but interestingly, there are no names listed in this report about the suspects. D.C. police say they can't offer answers tonight.
We got a wake-up call then. The fact that he could do that and get away with it was mind-blowing. I mean, we just thought, this is America, there's no way somebody could do that. And it not only affected us, it affected the people who depended on us. Because every time we would demonstrate and speak out, we were speaking for people back home who could not say anything. I mean, people in Africa and in Gambia think America, this beacon of freedom. Yaya may say whatever he wants, because when he's in Gambia, he talks about how he hates the West and how he doesn't care about, but he's lying. His wife lives here. He has a home here in the U.S., in Potomac, a multi-million-dollar home. His children go to school here. Whenever his wife has kids, she comes to deliver here. Also, you hate the West so much, and that the West are hypocrites, and that those of us who are here, whatever we're saying is the West that's putting us up to it. And so when he was able to come and do that, they lost hope, because they're like, if nobody can stop him, it's just not possible. There's no avenue.
Made a profound impact on me last August when President Obama hosted the first ever U.S.-Africa Leader Summit. And I was with some Gambian activists outside of President Jammeh's hotel at the Hay Adams. And the security guards came out and physically beat up those activists in broad daylight. Fatou Kamara, for instance, was beat up pretty badly, was sent to the hospital, had a concussion, had a $3,000 hospital bill, and nothing was done about it. So it was really sent a shockwave through my system, because you had this dictator who has been abusing his citizens with impunity for over 2 decades, exporting his human rights abuses here to the United States on U.S. soil, and there was still no accountability. None of the perpetrators were brought to account, and this happened right in front of my eyes, and happened in front of the cameras, in front of everyone, and nothing was done about it. So from that point on, I really took it as sort of a personal. I took it personally, and wanted to expose this regime for all that it is, and all that it continues to do against its own citizens, both in Gambia and abroad here in the United States.
I've always had hope. I've always believed that if we just continue pushing, that we can bring our issue in front of the US, in front of the EU, that they will care, they must care. That people are not going to watch these horrible things happening and just not continue to do anything. It's just because they don't know. But I'm realizing that that may not necessarily be the truth. All our hope was kind of hung on getting the international courts, getting the international bodies to act.
Well, unfortunately, not much has happened. When I presented it in March at the Human Rights Council, the representation of the Gambia was not even there. I mean, they are not a member of the council, but all member states of the UN are invited, and so there wasn't really much discussion. I mean, the AU countries were not particularly interested in the report, and European countries did not even pick up, or other countries, I mean, from other parts of the world, didn't even pick up on the report. If the Gambia had been there defending itself and criticizing my report, perhaps we could have a better discussion.
I'm one who believes in a democratic process, and I've always advocated for that. But when you close all avenues of peaceful change, then you make violent change inevitable. That is what is happening in the Gambia.
Because you can't. I just printed T-shirts in the End Dictatorship now. 100 T-shirts distributed, I get a life sentence. Politicians, the political parties, their leaders get picked up, thrown in jail. And journalists criticize the regime, you disappear. You go to the international community, do all the advocacy, they put out a press release, and then that is it. So what else did you left them? If it's easy if you are just talking about some other country but if it's your mom, your father being picked up, disappeared, and not even being charged, the government itself not respecting our laws, what do you expect? At some point it'd be like, okay, forget the US, I'll take any risk to try to change this because it's not sustainable. Knowing if you succeed, they're the same ones who would come and say, oh, glad you did it. But if you fail, there's why did you do that stuff? And what you're fighting for is essentially to set up something similar to what you have here. And even here, you didn't go beg the British, say, hey, can you let us, go? No, it's very frustrating, but it's something has to be done. And if we don't stand up, if we don't do anything, no one else is going to do it for us.
30th of December, I said, well, they have not succeeded. I wish they had succeeded. But things will never be the same again. And for that, I will thank all of them. Yes, there's the Neutrality Act is around, there's legal issues that are involved. But there are also moral issues that are involved.
Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela in South Africa, these are all people that we celebrate now because of the enormous risks they took to fight repressive environments. And that is the light in which we see these guys who gave up everything to try to end repression in the country. If they had succeeded, we would have been naming streets after them now. And we were all disappointed when things didn't go their way. But we knew none of us advocates violence because we have family members there. But we also know the type of environment, the type of conditions that compel them to take the risks to bring about change.
I mean, it's just, I cannot understand how human beings can do this to one another. It's a very painful thing. And, when I cry, I don't just cry for my family because I'm proud of my brother. I know that no matter what, either the FBI or the State Department or Jammeh or reporters might label him, he was brave enough to stand up. And I know that he stood up not because he wanted to go there and take over the government, or not because he wanted to have a position of power. The best thing that happened to Jacob was the US military. He wanted to come back and be in the military and serve his men. His men loved him. I've had some of his men who say to me, Siga, all he had to do was ask us and we would have gone with him. Because that's how much we respected him. I said, well, he would never do that. Because it was his fight. He believed in the democratic process. He believed in justice. But when you close down all those avenues, I mean, just look at what happened after they were killed. To this day, we don't have his body. And as painful as that is, when I think of the mothers of Lamin Sane and Jammeh'S who were also killed, but then their children were killed and then they were arrested. They didn't even know their children were in the country and kept for 6 months. Their family not knowing where they are, not even given a chance to mourn. Pictures of our loved ones left with their dead bodies out in the streets, being passed around. They inboxed it to family members and friends. These are not human beings. Because I don't think that an average, ordinary human being who does not have any mental illness can do this to another human being. And worst is that there are other people watching it and not saying anything. And worst is that the people who tried to do something are being persecuted. It seems like everything is upside down.
They said no matter how long a stick stays in the river or a stone, it can never turn into a crocodile. I am here, but I am an American right now, but I have the heart of the Gambia.
Every time something happens, you feel so hopeless and you just like, we might as well just give in. But then you can't, because then another story comes in of somebody who's been brutalized and you're like, I just can't take this. I can't sit down and watch this. Even if it seems like what I'm doing is not making any difference, what else can I do? The other alternative is to sit down and just not do anything. Nobody else is doing anything. So you just keep doing any little thing, even though it feels like you're this little ant against an ocean. So it's not an option to give in. And freedom does have its price. It's never free, and it's paid for usually not by the majority, but a few. And so for that, it is worth it. It's worth it.